This meeting is being recorded, so stand by for that as well. This is our low-tech presentation to talk about what's been going on in Frankfort since the restart of the Kentucky General Assembly. And we are fortunate to have Link NKY politics and government reporter Mark Payne on the ground, embedded in Frankfort for the duration of the session. You can see his fingers right there and also his face. And our sponsor logo, the One NKY Alliance. We're grateful for their support of this broadcast and Mark's coverage in Frankfort. Mark, thank you so much for talking to us tonight about what's been going on in Frankfort.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
I also want to note that we have a couple of panelists joining us for analysis of the events going on in Frankfort. We are joined by Campbell County Democratic Party Chairperson, Crimson MacDonald. Crimson, thank you so much for being with us also.
Thanks for the invite, Mike.
And we have local attorney, author, political commentator, operative, and I think competitive figure skater, Rick Robinson, who is with us. Rick, thank you for being with us, and don't be such a boomer. Unmute yourself when you say hello back to me.
Yeah, I'm also the logo for Link. I'll be part of the branding for to try and get the older crowd in all of this. So yeah, thanks for having me on, Michael.
That's our pleasure to have you, and we have this lovely chalk image here. We are a startup, but this is beautiful, isn't it? It's very nice. Mark, I do want to start with you tonight because you are in Frankfort, and there has been a lot of movement as it relates to redistricting over just the past 24 hours. We spent a lot of time last week publishing articles, writing articles about redistricting and how it is impacting Northern Kentucky. And Governor Beshear just yesterday on Wednesday vetoed 2 of those pieces of legislation, the state house districts and the congressional districts. But the General Assembly today, dominated by Republicans in both chambers, overrode those vetoes. And now what's going on? Mark, give us the latest.
Yeah, it has been a chaotic day in Frankfort, not just with redistricting, but also with the budget. But as you mentioned, Michael, with the redistricting bills getting vetoed by the governor less than 24 hours ago, the House and the Senate both made them priorities to override today. And with those supermajorities in the chambers, it was going to be an easy thing for them to do. So House Bill 2, which is the House redistricting bill, and then the Senate Bill 3, which is the congressional redistricting bill, they both were overrode for the governor's vetoes. That means they're law now. So they are in law. But there's already been a lawsuit filed by the Kentucky Democratic Party in Franklin County. So that's the latest news.
The latest news is a lawsuit filed by the Kentucky Democratic Party to stop this newly enacted law following the veto override, easily passing both chambers of the General Assembly just today. We will have full coverage of that at linknky.com later this evening. Again, Mark Payne, our correspondent in Frankfort for the duration of the Kentucky General Assembly 2022 session. His coverage will be at at rcnky.com, eventually linknky.com. I'll get the hang of this soon. So what was said today, Mark, if anything? We've had a lot of comments from lawmakers over the course of the proposal of the maps, the debate of the maps, the adoption of the maps, the veto of the maps, and then what happened today with the override of the veto. Did we hear anything new or fresh from any of the lawmakers involved in this process?
Not too much. The overrides went through both chambers pretty quickly. There's nothing that was said. I think it was expected that it was going to happen. The House budget, there was 2 bills that went through the House today on the budget bills, and those took up a vast majority of the floor debate time. So those bills, the overrides went through both chambers pretty quickly with not too much disagreement or anything new.
Well, let's talk about the impact to Northern Kentucky should these maps stand. And obviously, there is a legal challenge, and we know as recently as the last time the maps were redrawn that there was a delay in the enacting of the new maps, and the existing maps were used for one more election cycle before the newly drawn boundaries took shape. big changes, particularly to the state house seats. In your estimation, Mark, as you've gotten to know this process and the lawmakers who are from Northern Kentucky doing the work of the people in Frankfort, who's most impacted?
Yeah, the 65th district in Covington is going to be hugely impacted by these changes. The northernmost tip of Buddy's, so Buddy Wheatley's the rep in the 65th district. He is going to lose the northernmost tip. It's going to go to those precincts in the 63rd are going to kind of move to the 63rd district, which is represented by Kim Banta. And then he has some eastern precincts that are going to move into, I believe, the 64th with Representative Kim Moser. And a lot of the
Wheatley is, of course, a Democrat, one of two Democrats in the Northern Kentucky Legislative Caucus. He's a Democrat from Covington. I'm here at the Link NKY office in downtown Covington, which is in the 65th House District. Under these new maps, I think right across the street would be in the newly redrawn 63rd district. So we're talking about the Licking Riverside neighborhoods. He would also be losing, of course, Mark, West Covington, Ludlow, Bromley, and some of those favorable precincts that have given him a lot of votes in the two times that he sought election. And he is seeing new areas picked up in more suburban and would have been characterized as Republican-leaning precincts in places like Edgewood and Crestview Hills, more places in Fort Wright, for example. And I understand, Mark, that Representative Wheatley is not happy about this.
No, he's been pretty vocal about not being happy. He has criticized the maps as not being transparent. And obviously, you know, the 65th district has been in place for a very long time in Covington, and it's going to change from a more urban district to a more suburban district if these maps do stay as they are. So yeah, he hasn't been too happy about it, and it's going to significantly change the makeup of the 65th district in Covington.
Another urban district that is facing some new boundaries is the 67th, which is another Democratic seat, Rachel Roberts from Newport. What are we seeing happen to that district, Mark?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to Buddy's district. More urban precincts moving into more suburban areas. So there's gonna be more precincts that move urban from the 67th to the 68th, and which generally favors Republicans.
What has been Rachel Roberts' reaction to this new map?
It's pretty much the same as Buddy's. You know, they both argue that there hasn't been a lot of transparency as far as, you know, the maps were released a week before Christmas or the week after Christmas. They were rushed through pretty quickly. There wasn't much time for public input. And with this obviously changing her district quite a bit, she's not super happy about it.
You're watching a live broadcast from Link NKY, and I am Michael Monks, the Chief Content Officer here at Link NKY. We are joined by our Frankfort politics and government reporter, Mark Payne, who is embedded in Frankfort for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly session. We are also joined today by local attorney, author, and political commentator, and humorist sometimes, Rick Robinson, and Campbell County Democratic Party chairperson, Crimson MacDonald. And hopefully we're joined by you too. And if we are, and you've got questions or comments, why don't you leave them underneath the live stream? My good pal, Mark Collier, our Chief Operations Officer here at Link NKY, will be reviewing them. Again, Link NKY is the result of a new merger of the River City News and Fort Thomas Matters. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming, and we're going to tell you all about that coming up. Mark Payne, I'll get back to you momentarily to talk about some of the other districts. Just to recap, the General Assembly adopted new maps for the State House and the State Senate and our congressional seats. And we saw Governor Beshear veto the State House and congressional districts. Hey, Mark, before I do turn away from you, the State Senate maps, which we will talk a little bit more about momentarily, those have not been vetoed yet, but he has a deadline of midnight tonight, or have they been?
They have not been vetoed in the last I checked right before this live. So it's possible that he has vetoed in this time. There was some mumblings at a presser he did today for the just his Team Kentucky coronavirus updates, that he thinks the Senate district maps are a little bit more passable than the House and the congressional. So it seems like he might pass the Senate redistricting maps, but it's still up in the air. He has until midnight tonight.
Okay, let's bring in Crimson MacDonald, the Campbell County Democratic Party chairperson. Crimson, I know that you know Representative Rachel Roberts well. I assume you know Representative Buddy Wheatley as well, even though we are on the other side of the Licking River with a great divide. What has been the reaction in Democratic Party circles locally about the changes to the only two Democrats who are members of the Northern Kentucky Legislative Caucus?
Well, to be honest, there's two reactions. There's one as a chair of a Democratic Party, a defensiveness in the sense that it was very partisan what they did, and their attempts to do it in such a non-transparent way, we knew was coming due to the hypermajority. They have no reason to get Democratic sign off on these maps. But I think more so, I'm concerned as an actual constituent at this point in time. I have a lot of hope in Rep. Roberts and her ability to hold her seat, even if these maps are the maps that we have to move forward with. But, you know, I'm in Fort Thomas. And so I was in the 68th. And now I'm in the 67th because only a few precincts out of over 20 precincts from Fort Thomas were moved. So even we can talk politics, but even as just a person, now I am represented by a different representative than 92% of the parents at my kids' school. Practical implications of drawing these partisan maps, because if we're drawing these maps to actually represent constituents and using and elevating their voice, they should have something in common. And now I don't even have anything in common with my legislative district, in the sense that I just go 2 blocks over and I'm out of it. Now, that is common. You have to draw a line somewhere, but when you draw it right through a city, like what they did to Representative Wheatley and Covington and what they did to Representative Roberts, it's really a breakdown of our democratic values, in the sense that we should have representation, and they're really breaking down the voice of the people, and that has been the most discouraging part. I have faith in our representatives, our Democratic representatives. I think Representative Wheatley has proven himself to be able to represent his district and farther than that, the suburban areas around him. And I have the same confidence in Representative Roberts, but the fear really comes to the partisanship that we're seeing and diluting the voice of the constituents. And that's really our concern.
So what about the newly drawn 67th, of which you are now a resident, apparently? Yeah. What makes it more Republican leaning? It doesn't seem to be as suburban as the 65th is made, right? It does snake along the Licking River and into Wilder and a little bit south of that. What are you concerned about as a Democrat as it relates to holding that seat through Democratic voters?
Well, again, I'm going to reiterate my confidence in Representative Roberts. And there is less of that distinction that you're talking about. I think in the 65th, we do see a huge divide in the diversity of representation that is going to be required. But when you get further down in Campbell County, you can see, you know, it's blue, then it goes purple, and then it goes red. And they took some of that blue away, gave her a little bit of that purple, and then gave her more of the red. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. With that said, you know, the 68th also is impacted by this. And I do think when I look at the 68th, it's a little bit easier now, in the sense that we got some of those blue areas sucked into the 68th that they took away from Representative Roberts. But again, it's bringing her into a more rural, suburban, urban representation, instead of having more of that urban core representation that she was responsible for before.
That's Crimson MacDonald, the Campbell County Democratic Party chairperson. If you're watching this broadcast of Link NKY, brought to you by the One NKY Alliance, leave us a comment if you've got a question or whatever, just a statement, and we will share them with the rest of the viewers. My good pal, Mark Collier, our chief operations officer here, is taking a look at those, and will share them with me, and we'll get the discussion going here with the panel. Let's bring in Rick Robinson, local author, attorney, and man about town who has a lot of years of experience.
Thank you for saying a lot of years in that, Michael. I appreciate it very much, as you're pointing out that I'm the oldest person on the panel, and probably the oldest person whenever you do anything on the air. I'm the old guy you bring in. The big news here is really not redistricting. It's the fact that my wife and my daughter have tickets to Adele Saturday night, and she just canceled her entire residency in Las Vegas. So let's get that out first. This is far more important around this household right now than redistricting, is the fact that they're leaving tomorrow morning to go see Adele.
If Adele has vetoed her Vegas appearance, can the Kentucky General Assembly override?
I think the Kentucky General Assembly should override the Adele's veto of her residency, and at least give my wife and my daughter some free buffet tickets when they get out to Vegas.
Well, irrespective of that tragedy, redistricting. You've been through it. You worked for Congressman Jim Bunning, who went on to be a senator. You worked for him for a long, long time, very close to him. You've been in Republican circles here in Northern Kentucky for a long time. I will mention that you're not here representing the Republican Party or the Republican point of view here. We brought you on just for your general political expertise. And redistricting is painful, I suppose, for some every cycle, especially depending on who's in charge and who might be on the receiving end of some unfavorable draws. But how does this current cycle of redistricting compare to some in the past, particularly for Northern Kentucky?
Well, they're all going to end up in lawsuits, and they all have in the last several times. A couple things are significant here. First off, and I would say this straight up, I have told you, Michael, over and over and over again, there's only two types of people in this world. There is AFL and there is NFL. People that are always from Ludlow and people that are never from Ludlow. The fact that my friend Buddy Wheatley, who graduated from Ludlow, is no longer going to be representing Ludlow, is going to upset some people from Ludlow, and I know it's going to upset Buddy. Buddy, AFL. Well, you can try and get this back in the lawsuit or in the next redistricting. But let's talk a minute, Mark, about what is going to be looked at in the lawsuit, because that's really what comes next. And whether it's all three bills that are vetoed or whether it's just the two bills that are vetoed. You first go to remarkably, this is something that Kentucky thought about when they were initially founding the original Constitution of the state of Kentucky. So Section 33 talks about when you redistrict, you have to do two things. You have to preserve as much as you can county lines. Crimson, I know that you live in the middle now of a split city, but the Constitution doesn't talk about cities. The Constitution talks about, keeping counties together. This plan actually keeps more counties together than the current plan that the people are serving under. And I think that was certainly by design, because they wanted the majority wanted to come out and say, we've kept more counties together than have been in the past. And the second thing is there can't be any more than the 5% deviation from, every, one person, one vote has to be the same. We have to have all the districts the same size. There can only be a 5% deviation. They're within the size of the deviation. That takes the Kentucky Constitution out of the way. But you have a third thing going on here, I think, that is going to be interesting, and particularly will come up in the Louisville districts, maybe Hopkinsville, maybe some in Lexington. But this goes to the federal issue, and the federal issue talks about, is there a disenfranchisement of certain voting groups? Is there an African-American bloc that is disenfranchised? Is there some sort of other minority group that is disenfranchised because of the redistricting? As much as I would like to say Ludlow is a disenfranchised minority, I don't think that's going to cut constitutional muster. So I think that's what it's going to come down to, and I think it will particularly come down to when you talk about the congressional redistricting and the finger that has come up into Franklin County.
You're talking about
the first district, maybe Comer's district. I think it's going to come into play. I think it's going to come into play also in a couple of the Louisville districts where minority representation in one of the districts went from, I want to say upper 50% minority to 48% minority, something of that nature. So I think that if I'm the lawyer on the side there, I'm going to be dialing this. That's what I'm going to be dialing into, because I think the things under the Kentucky Constitution, I think the majority pretty much knew what they were looking at and tried to make sure that they were going to have it a little bit better than the current situation.
All right, well, let me see if I can get some clarification on the way that you explained how counties need to be preserved as best as possible. It doesn't necessarily apply to cities. We are hearing a lot of city perspective.
Hearing a lot of city perspective, but the Constitution only talks about counties. And what we have, Michael, right now is a situation over the last 10 years where, quite honestly, what has happened is people have left the counties and they've come to Northern Kentucky, Louisville, Lexington, Hoptown, the urban areas that are drawing the people in for jobs and standard of living. And so these districts are changing. I mean, I think the odd one, and Crimson, you may know the number, but the person that actually serves in another part of the state, they moved an entire district to Lexington because they had to. The Lexington has grown so much in population that they had to add another district. They had to take a district from here and move it to here. That happened, I believe, last time in redistricting as well, if my old memory serves me correctly. But again, this is going to end up, I think, when all these happen anymore, we know they're going to end up in court, and they're going to end up with arguments over both the state and the federal side. And that also leaves a whole bunch of people sitting on the sidelines going, should I file or should I not file?
Exactly. That's what I'm wondering about now, because we already know that the filing deadline for those races that have to be determined in the May primary, it was moved from January 7 to January 25th, which is next week. But if there's a legal challenge, Rick, is there a possibility that this gets delayed further, or does there come a point where they say, no, we're going to keep the current districts again for this cycle and get back to this in a couple of years?
I think what you would have to do is we'd have to, Mark, and you may be able to answer this better than me. You may have seen the lawsuit already. I would assume that the people that are filing the lawsuits are asking for a temporary injunction of the filing deadline as well. Now, I don't know that is the case. Like I said, Mark may have seen that better than I have at this point. By the way, Mark, you're doing a great job of reporting down there. I no longer have to go to the Courier Journal to figure out what's going on in Frankfort. Thank you. But
seal of approval, very, very valuable on Elm.
But I think that's gonna make it. That's gonna depend on how they position the lawsuit. And I mean, gerrymandering, redistricting, drawing lines going up, up one side of the street and down the other side of the street is nothing new in Kentucky, and are nothing new in the United States. It's things that have happened in redistricting all the time.
Well, here's what I'm curious about, and perhaps you can help me understand, because you've worked in politics directly. I don't know if you've ever helped draw a map, for any of.
I actually have back in the 70s.
See, look, now you're aging yourself. I had nothing to do with it. So
you were not born yet, Michael. When I was working on a map, first off, there were, you could count the number of Republicans in the House and the Senate on, they could have caucus meetings in a telephone booth at the time.
This is a completely different era, right? I mean, because back
completely different era. This is the first time
they did Northern Kentucky as well.
Yeah, this is the first time that the legislature has a veto-proof Republican majority that they've ever done this, probably since Reconstruction
Okay, again,
voting times. This is the first time that the Republicans have control of both chambers to be able to draw the lines.
okay,
So in that light, it is in fact significant.
we do have some comments and questions. And again, if you are watching this live broadcast from Link NKY, a discussion about redistricting and other goings on in Frankfort during the Kentucky General Assembly, a broadcast brought to you by the One NKY Alliance. Leave your comments or your questions in the comment thread below this video, and we'll get some of them on camera. I'll note some comments now. Steve Megerly writes in, both the 67th and 65th retain a majority Democrat registration. I'll bring in Crimson MacDonald, who is the Campbell County Democratic Party chairperson, a resident of Fort Thomas, redistricted herself from the 68th district to the 67th, should these maps be held up in court. Crimson, does that appear to be true? I don't have that data in front of me.
I have the data, and that is not true. I can confirm it for honestly both seats. It did swing. If I don't have the numbers with me, and I should have brought them, but I think it swung the 67 to a +3 Democrat to now a +5 Republican.
For our viewers' sake, when I see those terms floated around by Politico types explaining the maps, what does that mean?
That means that before, a Democrat would perform 3 points higher in the 67th, and now it would favor a Republican by around 5 points.
And that's based on previous election performance.
Yes, that's based off of.
Yeah, that's election performance, right? Crimson,
Yeah.
That's not necessarily voter registration.
Well, it's also voter registration. Yeah.
Okay.
So you dispute that? You say that, I mean, that these are now more Republican districts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mhm.
And it appears to be, again, we've gone over this a bit, more true for just targeting purposes, the 65th district represented by Democrat Buddy Wheatley, because Kim Banta, a Republican from Fort Mitchell who represents the 63rd district, wishes mostly Kent County, does go west into northeastern Boone County. But under these new maps, it takes up Rick Robinson's native land of Greater Bromley, and then it comes into West Covington, and for some reason stretches
The greater metropolitan Ludlow Bromley area, as we like to call it, the Twin Cities, as we say.
It stretches east to the Licking River and just picks up a few precincts like River Center Boulevard and downtown Covington, parts of downtown Covington, where I am. Crimson, what do you think the strategy is there? Is it to make Buddy Wheatley vulnerable, or is it to bolster Kim Banta somehow? She didn't seem to face any challenges before.
I mean, that's what's so interesting about the entire majority. They really don't need more seats. But no, it's a direct attack on both of the representatives. They're the only two Democrats that represent Northern Kentucky, and they were moved to a redder district to represent. So yes, it will probably help Kim Banta, Representative Banta, but I did not look at the maps and think, oh, this helps. I think Representative Banta had no problem holding her turf, and she had it. If the maps do not change, I suspect she will win again. So it was in her favor to begin with. That's part of what makes this so amazing, because if it was in good faith and not political, we wouldn't see the significant drastic changes that we're seeing in Northern Kentucky, because they already have the majority here. We have two representatives that are Democrats. Otherwise, the Republicans are running fine and doing just fine, getting the votes that they need.
Let's bring in Mark Payne. He is Link NKY politics and government reporter. We have him embedded in Frankfort. He's living in Frankfort for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly. Mark, what are we hearing from Northern Kentucky Republican lawmakers? Because obviously their districts are changing as well, and some of them significantly. It doesn't necessarily change the competitiveness of those districts yet, as the Democrats are still in that rebuilding phase to find some candidates to be competitive in many of the districts across the region. I'm thinking of someone like Savannah Maddox. She's made quite a name for herself statewide, combating Governor Andy Beshear and his COVID mitigation efforts. She represents the 61st district. She's out of Dry Ridge in Grant County, but that's a district that includes all of Grant, Southern Kenton, and a little piece of Boone. Currently, under the new maps that she would run under for re-election this year, she shifted out of Kenton County completely, keeps all of Grant, and then picks up more of Boone. And then they've got Mark Hart, who is someone that we don't deal with a whole lot, because now you're into like Pendleton County. That creeps in to Southern Kenton County. Are we hearing anything from Republican lawmakers about the condition that their districts are left in after these new maps are approved?
I haven't heard too much from House Republicans as far as their districts, and in the majority of circumstances, it improves their chances of being reelected. The Senate maps are a different discussion because the Senate maps do change Republican districts quite a bit in Kenton County and Boone County, but that's a different story.
Well, let's talk about that different story, because the Senate maps are different. And for example, Boone County, which I believe is the fastest growing county in the state, has primarily only been represented by John Schickel, the Republican out of Union. They would have a second senator, right?
Correct. So right now, Boone County is District 11, which is John Schickel. It's essentially going to be split into two, and the southern portion is going to become a part of District 20. And then Senate 23,
a very
District 20.
that picks up some of the counties. If you're driving towards Louisville, those counties will now be part of a Senate district with Southern Boone.
Correct.
And then we are residents of the 23rd Senate District here at the Link NKY headquarters in downtown Covington. That's represented by Republican Chris McDaniel of Taylor Mill. But again, this strange attraction by the Republican map drawers of these precincts in downtown Covington. Part of downtown Covington, including the Licking Riverside neighborhood, the area right across the street, I believe, is the boundary of that would shift to Senate District 24, which is predominantly made up of Campbell County and Bracken County and Pendleton County currently. Will Schroeder, a Republican from Wilder, represents that district. What have we heard about why those three precincts in Covington would be shifted out of Chris McDaniel's district into this much more rural Senate district?
Yeah, Senate President Robert Stivers has said that those three precincts moved into District 24 because the neighborhood in District 24, which is Newport, the Ovation Project area, is really similar to the Licking Riverside neighborhood in Covington. Chris McDaniel has said that he isn't necessarily happy to lose those three precincts because he's going to pick up more rural suburban precincts, but he was happy to do it because it had to be done, for the redistricting maps. But it certainly changes the outlook, or it certainly changes the look of District 23 and 24. And those three precincts moving over, even with those explanations, are a bit odd.
Rick Robinson, let me bring you back in to break down Robert Stivers' comment that perhaps those precincts in Covington have more in common with Newport than they do the rest of the 23rd. Do you believe that Licking Riverside has less in common with Fort Mitchell than it does with Big Daddy's liquor store?
There you go. As someone who has frequented Big Daddy's liquor store, I think that's first off, as you and I both have. I think that's where we start. But I think what you're again looking at is go back to the whole idea of what is causing all of this issue to begin with, and the fact of the matter is, when you go back to it and this is one thing the court is going to have to deal with, is that the Golden Triangle, Louisville, Lexington, Northern Kentucky, has grown. The others have dissipated. You got to stay within that 5% range. Where are the people coming from? I was with John Schickel the other day down in Frankfort, ran into him, and he said, "Yeah, I don't represent all the Boone County anymore." He said, he was kind of, I wouldn't say frustrated, but was kind of chuckled about it because I represented all of Boone County all my career. So he looks at it, in that perspective. But the fact of the matter is, Boone County is growing with the whole thing that you have coming on with the Amazon Center coming in, the growth that's going on, and the subdivisions that are being made. Those are the things that you have to look at, which is the background that is causing this whole movement of people and movement of lines to begin with.
You got to follow the people. I mean, the district.
You got to look at the people. I mean, the one thing that it's 10 years ago, the big argument was going to be whether they were going to put Arnold Simpson and the Newport district with Dennis Keenan together and make them run off in a primary. Again, that would have violated the county line rules that they talked about, but it's again part of the whole issue of trying to come up with this plus or minus 5%, keep the counties together, keep your voting districts together, your voting influence groups together. So again, what's going to happen in the lawsuit? Mark, I'll be waiting to read that you follow it, and I hope you will when you get the copy that you print you print a copy and link, because I am waiting to see how both sides end up posturing themselves in the lawsuit, because that's what it's all going to be about anyway.
A couple more comments. Connie Grubbs writes, they can't win honestly, so they changed the rules. And Melissa Whalen writes, in 2022, we should have nonpartisan groups controlling redistricting. The fact we have to deal with this is insane. Of course, the next time that we deal with redistricting will be after the US Census, because that's when we do this. So it would be after 2030. Some states have moved to independent commissions. Crimson.
I'll be joining from the old folks home at that point for that broadcast, Michael.
Oh, I'm sure you and I will be having lunch in Toledo very happily that day.
Yeah, we will have retired to Punta Gorda, and be running this broadcast from there.
Crimson MacDonald is chairperson of the Campbell County Democratic Party, an independent commission to deal with redistricting. Is that something that you see support from Democrats for?
It hasn't been a huge topic of conversation necessarily until now, but absolutely. I mean, again, it goes back to all of this is easy to talk about in a political way. And of course, I'm concerned about my candidates. Of course, I'm concerned about the implications to the political map. But at the end of the day, it's about representation. And if we had an independent commission actually drawing these maps, then we could strip out the partisanship and have more faith. Because at the end of the day, we need to be instilling faith in democracy, and to show that democracy works and that we can work together and build these maps in ways that make sense based off of the census. There's no way that anyone can justify that they sat down with census data and drew these maps without a partisan mind. And to be honest, if Democrats were drawing it, it would be the same. Like, we are political parties, we're political actors. The people in Frankfort are there as politicians. So having an independent commission drawing these maps absolutely would improve not only the output, but it would improve the trust that constituents have in the maps at the end of the day.
I mean, I think you have to look at, Crimson, I mean, the current Newport district is connected to Silver Grove by census precincts that are in the river. It doesn't matter which party is in control of which. The redistricting always is political.
Exactly.
When you look at that district, I mean, if you talk about the funkiest district in Kentucky right now, it's the Newport district.
Really?
It's joined with the southern county via the river. There is no contiguous people living in between the river cities and Silver Grove.
It's somewhat similar in, I guess, maneuvering as the 4th congressional district, which we all live in, because if you live in Oldham County, you have the same congressperson as someone who lives in Ashland, right? And I guess the way that they justify that is because it's drawn along the Ohio River. And so that's similar to the way that the current 67th district boundary is, right? It tries to connect the river cities together.
Well, but at least it's connected by people, not by a census district that is in the middle of the river.
Let me ask you this, Rick. I know you've got a lot of Republican friends. This isn't a big priority for Northern Kentucky, but it is a curiosity. I think the district in general that's gotten the most conversation this time around. Of course, all areas have their grievances, perhaps parties have their grievances, candidates and office holders have their grievances. But James Comer, the Republican congressman from Western Kentucky originally, he does apparently have a home in Frankfort from his time as agriculture commissioner. And his district now stretches in a very strange way from the far reaches of Western Kentucky.
5 hours from one end to the other.
The fact that Frankfort and Paducah would be in the same congressional district is a bit strange, is it not?
I think the interesting point that I think the governor made in his comments, and I think that's why I said I think the congressional district lines are probably going to get more scrutiny in a lawsuit than the state house and senate lines, is because of exactly what the governor said. You can drive from Lexington to Louisville and drive through 5 congressional districts. You know, and it's because of the finger, as they're referring to it down in Frankfort. They are, you know, what they're calling it is what they're calling it down there. And I think that is going to be the one that comes into some scrutiny as on the court side, that they're going to take a look at. And you know, again, it's a 5-hour drive from one end of the district to the other.
Well, in our last few moments together, we do want to touch on some other issues that are emerging out of Frankfort. Mark Payne is Link NKY politics and government reporter. He is spending the entire Kentucky General Assembly session period in Frankfort. He's embedded there. We put him up, and as you see behind him, the One NKY Alliance sign. They are our sponsor for this broadcast and Mark Payne's coverage at Link NKY. Mark, what else has been happening this week in legislation?
So with the redistricting bills happening over the past 24 hours, the other big thing is the budget bills. The House budget bill, which is House Bill 1, that went through the Appropriations and Revenue Committee this morning, went to the House floor for a vote and passed. And then the transportation portion of the House budget, House Bill 241, that also went to the A&R Committee, went to the House floor, and that also passed today. So they went through pretty quick. They got votes. There was quite a bit of debate for House Bill 1, both in the committee meeting and the House floor debate, but they were able to successfully go through today.
Let me talk about a couple of issues that are maybe not top of mind for the lawmakers, but they always emerge in the form of a bill that never see the full light of day, and that would be gambling and weed. There are Kentuckians who enjoy the occasional vice, but we still don't have the full-on casino gambling, and we don't have any access at all to marijuana, despite being surrounded by other states that have some form of access to marijuana. Rick Robinson, what are you hearing from your lawmaker friends on gaming?
Well, I think gaming has a new life, and it has a new life right now because it's gaining national attention as Adam Koenig has brought up this whole idea of breakage into the issue. I had not really thought about it that much, but it is an incredible moneymaker for the tracks and incredibly unfair to the people who are betting. It came about, if you don't know what the issue is, and again, my gosh, Adam has gotten coverage. Randy Moss, the spokesperson for horse racing on NBC, had him on the other day to talk about this issue of breakage. What happens is that when you used to go to the old Latonia racetrack, when the horses went to the wire, you didn't know what the odds were because nobody had counted all the money yet to see what the number was. They count up all the money, they figure out the odds, they give the payoff, and then what they would do is they would lower the amount of the payoff to the rounded down to either the lowest 10 or 20 cent number. So that's kind of this breakage that ends up being the house money, no matter what happens. Idea at the time is you don't want to, it's taking up too much time as people stand in line, you're going to dip down the money. We don't need to be counting out pennies. in the odds. We're going to keep it that. As we moved into this era of electronic gaming, where you can take your phone and bet the Derby this year, we can, Michael, you and I can go to lunch in Toledo and sit around and watch the Derby and bet on our phones. Shouldn't we get the full payment of our odds? If the horse goes off at 20-1, shouldn't we get a 20-1 payoff? And quite honestly, even for somebody who enjoys horse racing and has gone to it a lot, I didn't realize how impactful the issue was. I had heard of it, I hadn't thought it through, but I think it's gotten some new life into Koenig's bill on gaming when you jumble all those things together. And I think you may have a chance at this getting a better hearing in the Senate this time than you have in the past. As to marijuana, medical or otherwise, I think people are still going to be driving up and having lunch in Toledo. So
you gave it away, man. You gave away. All right. Crimson MacDonald is the chairperson of the Campbell County Democrats. Cannabis is a winning issue, even in Kentucky. You read poll after poll that indicates people want this. Is this an issue that Democrats can possibly seize if, in order to win? I mean, people want this.
You're right. I mean, it is an issue that we can win on. We have almost half of the states in the country that have legalized recreational use of marijuana. If you don't have many friends, maybe you don't know this, but I know many people are running up to Illinois, Michigan, leaving the state. That is money that should be in our state. And not only that, but it goes back to Kentucky heritage. We are a farming agriculture state. And I know for me, I would love to see the beauty that comes from legalizing marijuana, in the sense that we can bring farming back and have generational farmers again. It opens up, it's not just that it becomes an attraction point. I mean, I can see it now, Bourbon and Buds tour through Kentucky. I mean, we already, if this is a moral question, we know alcohol can be detrimental to society.
Crimson, you're thinking of the slogan too much here. I think you've already got a business proposition going here that you're going to be doing tours.
Well, I'm ready to lead the tour. I will drive the bus. But it's true. I mean, if the argument's moral, before, 10 years ago, even, we would hear people say, yes, but marijuana is so harmful in the community. It's so harmful in the family. And so now that we have half the states in the union almost that have it legal, we have actual data that can help us make data-driven bills that make sense to bring in revenue. Because if we want to talk about fiscal responsibility, the key is not just what we spend, it's the revenue we bring in. And so I think as a Kentuckian, I would love to see every opportunity possible for us to bring in more revenue. And I don't have a moral opposition to it, even if I'm not a user. I think that, my mother has multiple sclerosis. If she lived in Ohio, she could have a treatment that she can't get in Kentucky. And as someone in Kentucky,
Precisely. Therein lies one of the big.
I think Northern Kentucky is in a unique situation of seeing how this discrepancy is so impactful. It's absurd that I need to move my mom 6 miles north in order for her to get medical treatment recommended by a doctor. And so those are the types of things that we need to start thinking about. One, the medical side and improving the quality of life for people that have medical conditions that marijuana would help, but also the recreational side and how much that could benefit tourism in Kentucky and the farmers that are in Kentucky, and bring back generational farming in our state.
Crimson MacDonald is the chairperson of the Campbell County Democratic Party. Rick Robinson is my good buddy, local attorney, author, and political commentator.
Crimson is about to be the head of the Buds and Bourbon tour guide service for the state of Kentucky, as she is waiting for this to pass. So there we go.
And Mark Payne is Link NKY, politics and government reporter. Watch for his coverage from Frankfort, where he is embedded for the duration of the 2022 Kentucky General Assembly. You can read it at rcnky.com until we switch our website coming up in February. More details on that. coming up. My thanks to Rick Crimson, Mark Payne. We'll talk again soon. Rick will have lunch in Toledo on you very soon.
We will find a reason to go to Toledo sometime soon.
I'm Michael Monks, Chief Content Officer.
Got a wonderful McDonald's up there
here at Link. Sure hope that you will follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we will talk again soon. I believe we're going to do this again next Thursday. We'll mix up the group that we're talking with over the coming weeks. You'll see these familiar faces back again, hopefully soon as well. So shoot us an email at news@lincolnky.com or continue to leave comments on Facebook, and we will talk again soon. Thanks so much for watching.